What I really want to talk to you about today is the top 3 nutrient deficiencies that keep women stuck. Now, I'll probably end up talking about more than three. I've done this topic before, and I end up, once I'm on a roll, I start talking about all kinds of things, about nutrients, about diet, about absorption. But stay with me because I always aim to deliver some amazing value to you so that you can walk away with some real takeaways that you can use in your real life. So, if we have not met before, my name is Tori Vallon. I'm a women's integrative nutrition and lifestyle coach, and I'm a functional weight loss specialist. So, I want to mention something before I start talking about nutrients, and that is my flagship offer, the Radiant Health Reset, which has the most extraordinary outcomes. I have now had, oh gosh, I've had hundreds of women now go through the Radiant Health Reset. It's the most wonderful community because it really is a community, a container that you come into to move yourself towards optimal health. Extraordinary program. I want to mention there will be a price rise come the 1st of July. Okay, I want to talk about nutrient deficiencies, and I've covered this topic a little bit before, but things change. You know, the women who come into my programs, what I see now in women can be different to what I saw last year or 6 months ago. Things change because there are changes in our environment, in our socioeconomic environment, in our culture. There can be changes for any number of reasons. In our farming environment, for example, as well, in our rainfall, there can be all kinds of reasons why different nutrient deficiencies present at different times in the collective, in the population of people that come to me. A big one, a lot of magnesium deficient women come to me. And I would be here all day if I tried to tell you all the ways that magnesium is incredibly important to the human body. I think for me, I probably consider it our most critical mineral in our body because it's responsible for over 300 enzymatic processes and reactions. I'm going to say 300. Some people say up to 600 different enzymatic reactions and processes, right? Double what I'm saying, but minimum 300. And a lot of them are related to stress recovery. And a lot of them are related to our hormone interactions. And a lot of them are related to metabolism and regulatory processes. And a lot of them are hugely important in perimenopause, right? As our estrogen begins to decline in perimenopause, it's actually going to exacerbate our loss of magnesium. And a lot of us started out with pretty poor magnesium levels to start with. And then if sleep wasn't already terrible, then it's really going to go out the window. And if anxiety wasn't already up, then it may start surfacing for perhaps the first time. If you haven't already experienced hormonal imbalances, then you might for the first time. And it's often related to magnesium. But a lot of women are magnesium deficient even before any perimenopause begins. You know, really, magnesium deficiency is an epidemic problem because generally speaking, our soils are depleted in magnesium. This is a global issue. This isn't something that's specific to the conditions in Australia. This is Western countries in general. The crops that we're growing our soils in are magnesium depleted. This is, largely due to modern farming practices where there's not a lot of crop rotation going on. We tend to sow the seeds in the same fields over and over again, causing them to have lower and lower levels. And there's not a lot of replenishment in those soils unless you're buying your food from biodynamic farms, which is a little bit hard to do. It's not within reach for everybody. So this is one part of the problem, right? Because if the magnesium's not in the soil, then it's not in the food that's grown in the soil, and it's not going to be in the animals that are eating the food that's grown in the soil, and then it's not going to be in you. And to add to that, we have even more reasons why we'll end up magnesium deficient because our modern lives are so go, 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 do, 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 more, more, more. We squeeze so much into our modern lives, far more than we would have just a few decades ago, far, far more than our ancient ancestors would have tried to do. It's crazy what it is that we try to achieve, what our modern lives look like. And this modern stress epidemic that we have is depleting our magnesium. We're actually just excreting it out through our urine. It's required to bind to a lot of the toxic byproducts of stress, and off it goes. So we're losing a heck of a lot. And there's other environmental reasons too why we end up quite magnesium deficient. So having fluoridated water, right? Having fluoridated water, which we all, if you're on mains water, you're going to have that in Australia and in the US too, really in um, any Western countries, fluoridation of the water is a common thing. And that's going to bind to magnesium too. So we live lives that are anti-holding magnesium on board, and we live in an environment that's not conducive to bringing magnesium into our bodies. So it's a real struggle and we feel it. So this is one of the nutrient deficiencies that presents itself over and over. I see this in women's symptoms, in their anxiety, in their hormonal imbalances, in their struggles with metabolism, right? I can see a lot of interconnected points where I could trace it back to magnesium deficiency, their poor sleep, all kinds of things. So magnesium, let's put that down as number one. I feel like another one of the top ones, perhaps the second top one that I see is probably I see a lot of zinc deficiency. So again, zinc is another one that we're going to excrete when we're under high stress. By the way, when I talk about stress, if you've been watching me for a long time, you'll know when I say stress, I don't mean just mental and emotional stress. I'm talking about, yes, mental and emotional stress and trauma, but I'm also talking about physical stresses on the body and chemical stresses on the body. These stresses can be chronic too. Chronic stress doesn't always mean, thinking too much and being upset about things and being too busy. Chronic stress is also physical stresses on our body, chemical stresses on our body. So zinc is used up a lot in this process. Having diets high in refined foods is going to deplete zinc as well. Consuming alcohol is going to use up a lot of zinc because the process of actually trying to break alcohol down is a zinc-rich process. And once again, we come back to our soils are lower in zinc these days. Again, from over farming. I would not say that the issues with zinc are as widespread or as severe as they are with magnesium, but it's still an issue. Something else I want to say about zinc while it's on my mind as well is that a lot of medications are going to cause us to not absorb our zinc as well as we could. And zinc is one of the nutrients that if you are stressed and therefore you're not digesting and absorbing your food so well, zinc is one of the first ones that we notice. So, is there anything else I want to say about zinc? That's all I'll say about, well, you know what I want to say about zinc? I want to say that zinc is so critical to some of the symptoms that women are experiencing. So, zinc is another one, along with magnesium, that creates a beautiful nervous system resilience. And, often when we see women who are really sensitive to overstimulation, where, you just get that feeling of like, oh my God, two of my children say mum at the same time, I'm just going to melt. I'm just going to combust, that real lack of nervous system resilience, that feeling of like, oh my God, I just can't handle loud noises, or I'm just overwhelmed in this place. It's too busy. There's too much sound, like my completely sensory overwhelm. That can often be a sign of zinc deficiency. Sometimes disordered eating is a symptom of zinc deficiency. Obviously, poor immunity, we all know that one, right? And we all know, poor hair health and poor skin health and poor nail growth. One you might not have front of mind is how important zinc is to a healthy thyroid. And your thyroid is largely responsible for your metabolism. So you want to make sure that you've got a really zinc-rich diet, but you also want to make sure that you're able to digest and absorb this beautiful zinc-rich diet that you have in front of you. By the way, all of the things that I'm talking about right now, and really this is a pretty casual conversation that we have, but all of these things are things that we go through in detail in the Radiant Health Reset. We really break it down, and we don't just have casual conversations. I actually present formal education with slides so that effectively my participants, who are really my students, can begin to really embody this knowledge about micronutrients and how critical they are. Because I don't want us to think about food as just food. It's just calories, it's just energy. I eat it, it gives me a bit of energy, and then I feel no energy and I need to just fuel myself up again. I want my Radiant Health Reset participants to look at their plate and understand the foods that they've got, the micronutrients that they see, and to feel really good about the systems and the processes in their body that they are nourishing, that are now going to work so well, that didn't for a long time because they were lacking the micronutrients. I want it to make sense. And I want us to get, I think we're all smart enough to delve a little bit deeper than just thinking about macronutrients, just going, well, we've got carbohydrates, we've got fat, and we've got protein, and that's it. And we don't have to think too much about what's in between, because carbohydrates, fat, and protein, it's good to be aware of macronutrients. They're important to a point, but it's the micronutrients that drive our biochemistry. Every little tiny process that works in your body, every single thing runs because of biochemistry. And where does the biochemistry come from? It comes from micronutrients. And where do the micronutrients come from? They come from your food. And if you don't get them from food, where are you going to get them from? I know you can supplement. I'm aware of that. But is that the best way? I want to talk a little bit about iron, because iron is, while it's not every woman who comes to me is struggling with iron deficiency, but it's there for a lot of women, and they can end up on a little bit of a roundabout. And iron can be a complex one because iron depends on a lot of other factors in the body, whether or not you're actually able to store it correctly. Whether that store, when we try to measure that store, whether what we're measuring, what we see, is accurate or not, because ferritin, our iron stores, are also an acute phase reactant. It can go sky high just when there's an infection in the body, and you might not even be aware of that infection, but it can go sky high. So when we look at that number, it's like, is that a true reflection of what you're truly storing in terms of iron? And what else I want to say about iron? I think, with iron, we can get stuck in a cycle because women want to feel more energy, and they can sometimes put a lot of emphasis on iron, rightly so. We need to have good iron stores. But they can often neglect to think, well, where am I losing iron in the first place? And a lot of women who come to me are losing iron in a few different places. And one of those places can be their heavy menstrual cycles. And it becomes more common beyond the age of 40. Why? Because a lot of women beyond the age of 40 are beginning to struggle with inflammation, but also estrogen dominance, or a relative estrogen dominance. And that's a factor in these very heavy periods. I think as well, a factor in women being low in iron is that it's not always in the diet in the way that we need it to be in the diet, in the bioavailable forms that we need to have in the diet. But as well, and we talked about this with zinc, women are struggling to actually break it down. They're struggling to digest. If it's in the diet, they might still struggle to digest it and absorb it adequately. And if you've got a high stress life, just like I said with the zinc, one of the first things we notice is women can be low zinc. Even if there's plenty of zinc sources in the diet, they're not digesting it well, they're not absorbing it well. And the same could be said for iron. Women who are low in iron, but they're not losing a lot, they're not giving away a lot in heavy menstrual periods. They've also got it in the diet, but yet their iron stores aren't right. Well, often, I mean, it could be a cofactor. It could be problems with copper in the body, right? It can be problems with cofactors that help us keep iron in the right place. But sometimes it's as simple as we're not actually adequately digesting and absorbing the iron that's already in the diet. And we need to get a little bit better at that. And we learn that in the Radiant Health Reset, exactly how to do that. So low stomach acid, that's a problem. And the more stress you've got in your life, the lower your stomach acid's going to be. So I think, magnesium, zinc, iron are some of the ones that I really wanted to talk to you about today. I just want to throw in a special mention for B12 because I see so much B12 deficiency as well. I think it's super common. I think there's a lot of myths around how much B12 you'd need on board to be feeling really good. It's really common for women to come to me and say, well, I had my serum B12 tested and my GP is really happy with where my B12 is at. Okay, great. And then a little bit later, they'll mention to me, yeah, so my B12 was 300. My serum B12 was 300 and that's really good. And that's when I stop them and go, actually, to be feeling really good, you need your B12 way up, like over serum B12 should be up over 600 for you to be feeling really good, for you to be managing your stress really well, for your energy levels to be adequate. B12 is so essential for your energy production. B12 helps you, along with iron, helps you form your red blood cells, and you want them to be a really beautiful size. You want them to be, and it's going to take good iron levels and good B12 levels to have a nice size of red blood cell. You want it to be big enough that it can carry plenty of oxygen, right? So iron's going to help you with that. But you want it to be small enough so that it can travel to the tiniest of capillaries in your body, like, your extremities and your little toes, You want it to be able to travel into the tiniest places. So B12 helps keep your red blood cells the right size for all of that. So if you're feeling pins and needles, you're feeling numbness in extremities, sometimes it's worth just checking, could I do better with my B12? And there's a lot of medications that people are commonly consuming that are interacting with their B12 levels and making it hard for them to bring them on board. Our birth control pills, and, if you're using metformin for insulin resistance, that can interact with B12 as well. So yeah, it's just good to be mindful. If you need to use medications for some reason, be aware that they can affect your B12 levels, and you may need to look at supplementation or just being really mindful of of how much B12 you've got in your diet. And if you are deciding for B12 that you need to supplement, if that's something you've decided in partnership with perhaps your GP or perhaps with your primary healthcare practitioner or someone that you're working with, then, being really mindful of the form of B12 that you're using, because there are some really trashy forms out there that won't do you much good at all. And then there's some really beautiful forms of B12 out there that could be just right for your body. And so just being mindful of, if it's a B complex formula, just having a look at those forms. And if you don't understand what the forms are, working with someone that can help you understand the forms of the nutrients. And this goes for any supplement that you decide that is right for you to use, being really mindful of the form. Is this form right for me? Is this a bioavailable form? Is this the form that's going to help me get to my goals? Rather than just pulling anything off the shelf. So I would just caution you that a lot of health food store brands, a lot of pharmacy brands unfortunately have some really poor forms of nutrients in them. and they could do a whole lot better. But sometimes it's like that, not because those companies are evil, but because it means they're able to make a product that's at a price point that makes it accessible for people. And for some people, maybe that's better, being able to access a product rather than no supplement at all. Well, perhaps. But I think ideally we always try to educate ourselves and work with people who might know a little more about this. Okay. Look, I'm going to wrap this up. I really hope that that was valuable to you, just to start to become aware of some of the common nutrient deficiencies that can keep women stuck with symptoms and not be able to move along, right? So we talked about magnesium and how magnesium is critical to our metabolism, to our nervous system, to keeping our stress levels low, to helping our sleep, and over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. We talked about zinc. We talked about how that's also really important for immune health and for nervous system health and for our thyroid. We have talked about, what was the other one we talked about? I know we just talked about B12. Oh, we were talking about iron, right? Keeping iron on board, having good iron stores. Iron's another one that our thyroid is really necessary for great thyroid health, but it's also going to be important for our red blood cell production. It's going to be really important for our energy levels. It's important for everything, actually. And then we talked about B12, right? The importance of B12 for helping us manage our stress. And what was the other thing I said about B12? I don't think I mentioned this, but it's also really important for your cognition and your mood as well. So, improving that sort of low mood. And I mentioned energy, right? I think I already said that. All right, great. So I really hope that was valuable to you today, to become mindful of some of these common nutrient deficiencies. Google which foods can I find these foods in? How can I make sure they're on my plate? In the Radiant Health Reset, we spell this all out. We make it really simple, and we look at a chart that's kind of the cheat sheet. Here's how we can make sure it's in the diet, and I give you meal plans and recipes so that you can't get it wrong. If you follow the balancing ball, then you're naturally going to start to restore a lot of these really important minerals and nutrients that your body needs to run on. So, if this information resonated with you today, if you found this discussion useful, if you're feeling like you'd like to take a step into something a little bit more and you want to find out more about the Radiant Health Reset and you'd like to get in, then I want you to comment. Type Radiant in capital letters. I won't miss it. And what will happen next is I'll reach out to you and we can talk a little bit more about what you're looking to achieve and whether the Radiant Health Reset 90-day beautiful healing container is what is right for you at this time in your life. Never any pressure, just a conversation about whether I can help you feel better, faster. Have an amazing day. Bye now.